In this video, we're gonna see the arrow functions. We're gonna open this, and this is a good time to introduce arrow functions because we're gonna continue working with Fetch API, and also we're going to see what is async await. So we're gonna make this to the right, like this, and open the console. Like this, and we're gonna open the app.js. We're gonna remove everything from here. And let's see what are arrow functions. We're gonna call this video arrow functions. Maybe it's going to take 2 videos. So we're gonna create a const. Normally we create the variables like this, const learning, or the functions, function, and we add something like console.log, learning, modern, JS, something like this. Then we console log, learning. So save this, and you can see this is going to print learning. It should be using parentheses. So you can see it says learning modern JS. And in this case, you can see it says console log, and we can skip this. Like this, and it's going to print learning modern JS. So this is the standard way of creating a function. You can see we have function. So you can see we have function and we have the parentheses. Using arrow functions, you can remove this. And you remove function. And then you add something like this, like an arrow right here. And this is going to be the same. So instead of using the word function, you will use this arrow. And then the parentheses is going to be before this arrow. You can see it's printing learning modern JS. In arrow functions, if your code is 1 line long, you can remove the square brackets like this, and you can see we have learning modern JS also. And if you are returning a value, so for example, right here in the learning, you can remove this console log. And like this is going to return the code. You can add console log right here, learning, and save this, and you can see you will have learning modern JS. So in the case that you are returning a value, you can skip the word return, and your function should look like this. If you try to return an object, and we're gonna create the object, let's add something like a message hello. Save this. You can see we have undefined. When you try to return an object, you have to add a parenthesis here. Parenthesis and then the object, and then it's going to be message hello. That's going to be really important. Now let me undo this code a little, like this. So if you try to pass parameters into this function, you are going to be adding this right here. So for example, you can add JavaScript, and then this is going to be the parameter. You can add, for example, tech, and you can remove this. And I'm gonna change this from single quotes to template strings, and $sign, open the braces, and we're gonna pass the tech. And you can see we have learning modern JavaScript. So this is how you pass parameters into the arrow function. Now, if you only are passing one parameter, you can skip the parentheses. So save this, and now you can see we have the same result. But if you add a second argument, something like learning, let me change the order of this. And right here I'm going to add, if you try to add a comma, message, and tech, and you try to add the curly brace right here, and you add message, then this is going to trigger an error, because when you have more than one parameter, you require the parentheses, tech, like this. And you can see it's working, learning modern JavaScript. But if you are passing only one parameter, you can skip the parentheses, like we did in this example. Let me undo this. And like this, you can see we only have one parameter, and you can skip the parentheses. That's going to be really important. So let me remove this. And we're gonna see arrow functions with a callback. Arrow functions with a callback. Let's say that we have a const called shopping cart. It's going to be equals to album, shirt, and also a guitar. Then we're gonna add a const product quantity. It's going to be equals quantity length. It's going to be, we're gonna add shopping cart, and we can use a map, the map function. Normally we add something like function, and then we add product, and then we return the product that length. So if you console log this, let me close this so you can see better the code. So if you console log this and save, it's going to return the length of these products, the length of the string. You can see here I added function and we added product. You can remove this function and add the arrow right here. And this is going to work. Also remember, if you only have one parameter, you can remove the parentheses. And this will also work. You can see that here we have these curly braces and this line is only one line long. So we can, for example, remove this, remove the braces, like this, and we can also skip the return value. So save this and you can see we have the same because we only have one line and we are intended to return that value. So you can see that the arrow functions will save you a lot of code. Finally, let's create a final example using an array with for each and arrow functions. So again, we're gonna, and I'm gonna bring back that array because we're gonna use the same example using a shopping cart. So we're gonna call this one arrow function with for each. So we have this shopping cart and we're gonna create something like shopping cart dot for each. Normally we create something like function, then we pass the product right here and open the braces, and then we console log the product. So we can save this and you can see we access each value. So again, if you want to take this into arrow functions, you can cut this function and add the arrow right here. This is going to be the same result. Since we only have one parameter, you can remove this and you can see we have the same result. And also, since this is a one line long, we can also remove this and put everything in one line. So this is going to work also. So in the next video, let's open that fetch API file, the one that was loading a TXT file, a JSON, and something from the REST API. And we're gonna see how we can add arrow functions into that code. Open the previous fetch API and we're gonna duplicate this. I'm gonna call this one fetch API and we're gonna add arrow function. We're gonna add something like arrow. Then I'm gonna open this into the Visual Studio Code. Then from here we're gonna open the index.html and we're gonna open this with live server. We're gonna click here on go live. And we're going to take this example using the fetch API and we're gonna remove these functions and we're gonna use arrow functions so you can see the before and after using arrow functions and the advantages that you will find when you are working with arrow functions. So first we're gonna start here in the load txt file function. You can see we have function right here. We can remove this and add the arrow function. You can see that we are only passing one parameter, so we can skip the parentheses. And also you can see that this function is only one line, so we can make this only one line like this. You can see that we have a return, so we can also remove that part, and it's going to be the code like this, response, and the arrow functions, response, text. So you can see that this looks more cleaner. So we can remove this console log for the second one, and I'm gonna cut this function, and I'm gonna add the arrow function right here. Again, we can skip these parentheses. And again, since this is only one line, we can remove the curly braces like this. And I'm gonna make this a little bigger so we can see better the whole code. I'm gonna remove this. I think I'm gonna remove that sidebar. And this is going to look, you can see how clean this looks compared to the other version. Finally, we have the catch, so we're gonna remove this function, add the arrow function right here, and we're gonna remove the parentheses, remove the braces, so this semicolon, this brace, and add the console into one line. So you can see that we finished this with a 4-line code. So let's see if this is working. We're gonna click here on load data, and you can see we have data from a TXT file. And you can see that using fetch API and arrow functions, the code is more simplified. So we're gonna continue with this load JSON. We're gonna remove this function, and we're gonna add the arrow function. We can again remove these parentheses. We're only passing one of these arguments. And again, we can remove the braces, the semicolon, the other brace, and add this everything into one line. We're gonna remove also this return, because this is going to return this code. So add the parentheses here, and you can see we have something like this. Then we have this one. This one doesn't have, well, it's more than one line, so we're gonna only remove this, add the arrow function, and remove the parentheses. So here we have another function, so we're gonna remove that. We're gonna remove the parentheses, and we're gonna use arrow functions. You can see it's looking nicer. Finally, we have the catch, so we're gonna remove this function. We're gonna remove this also, add the arrow function, remove these parentheses, remove this semicolon, remove this arrow, this brace, and put everything in one line like this. So we're gonna test the second button is going to be this JSON. So click here, and you can see we return the data from employees.json. Finally, the last one is going to be this load rest. So again, we can remove this function, add the arrow function, remove these parentheses, remove this brace, remove this return, put everything in one line, remove the semicolon, remove this brace, and it's going to be like this. Again, we have the same problem in the last one. This doesn't, well, this is more than one line, so we're gonna remove the function, remove the parentheses, and add the arrow function right here, and the same for the for each. Arrow function like this, and then we have the catch, which is going to be remove this, add the arrow function. We're going to remove also this semicolon, remove the brace, put everything in one line, and we can save this and click here on load rest. It's going to be JSON API, click, and you can see that this is working. So using the arrow functions, you can see that we remove several lines of code. And in the next video, we're gonna continue practicing these arrow functions. We're gonna open the name generator with fetch API, and we're gonna remove all the functions, and we're gonna use arrow functions. So let's continue working in the next video. Open the name generator and the one that says fetch API, and we're gonna duplicate this. And we're gonna change this name. We're gonna add fetch API, and also we're gonna use arrow, so we can identify that this is going to be the version and develop using arrow functions. So we're gonna open this index.html, and we can start the server, and we can also open the app.js. So open this server. Sometimes it doesn't run at the first time, so we should add this again. I'm gonna make this bigger, and we're gonna open the app.js. So here on the top, you can see that we don't have any functions, so we're gonna scroll a little, and you can see here where we have this fetch, we're gonna replace these functions with arrow functions. It's going to be really simple. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna remove this function, and we're gonna add the arrow functions. So from here we can remove the parentheses. It's only one parameter, so we're going to remove this. We're going to remove this brace and also this one. Semicolon at the end. We're going to remove this return. And we're going to put everything in one line. You can see how clean this looks. Second one is going to be this one. We're going to remove again the function. Add the array function. The arrow function, we're going to remove the parentheses. And in this case, this one contains more than one line. But you can see here we have the for each, so we can remove this function and add the arrow function right here. Also, we can remove the parentheses. We're only passing one argument, and it's going to be like this. Finally, we have the catch, so we're going to remove this and add the arrow function right here. We're going to remove the braces and put everything in one line. We need to remove also this semicolon, and we can remove these parentheses. So save this, and we're gonna generate some names from Colombia for mail, and we're gonna generate 10 different names. So click here on generate, and you can see that this is working, it's printing the results. Now I have opened the first example that we developed, the one using Ajax, and the second one is using arrow functions and fetch API, and you can see the difference between the code. This one looks more organized and also looks more compact. Of course, this one doesn't have the same amount of comments as this one, but you can see that fetch API code is going to look cleaner. But again, if you are trying to become a JavaScript developer, it's important that you know how to work with Ajax. The new and the old techniques are always important. That's why we added Ajax, and now we're working with fetch. So in the next video, we're going to introduce a new topic. It's going to be called async await. So let's continue working in the next video.